Well, we've got Robert H. Butler on the line. It's a return visit. How are you today?
Good. I have my coffee and my dragon mug, so I am
Yeah.
happy.
That's lovely, a dragon mug. Where'd you get that?
I picked up on Amazon. I saw it and I was like, yes, this is for me.
Yes. Now, you've been quite busy since we last spoke because you've got quite a few books that you've been working on, a couple in the Who Endures series. How do you write so many books so quickly?
Weaponized ADHD.
Hmm.
I have trouble focusing sometimes. So rather than work against my slight neurodivergence, I work with it. I
Hmm.
shift from project to project, but I'm usually doing, two or three at any given time. So I progress in all of them.
So, do you find that all your books seem to come out at once and then you have like a gap for a while because of that?
I try to space it out a little bit. I have released books out on the same day sometimes, or very
Wow.
close to, but it only takes me about 6 to 8 weeks to write a novel, so it's not that big of a gap. Usually it's artwork that holds me up.
Now, one of the books, Who Endures Conflicted Duty, where do the
Mhm.
characters go in this story?
Okay, so uh, in Conflicted Duty, it's centered around a series of characters who are in service to the main cast of the Who Endures series. Essentially, they're taking over the city of Hanok-Sen. It's very much a political drama centered around the rise to power of this new noble house and the conflict between the prince and his new wife, struggling for power for their respective houses. His own innate mistrust, his uncertainty, and her renewed confidence in her own sense of worth and her own ability to achieve things on her own.
What was it that inspired you to come up with this story?
This one is actually based loosely on the story of Lu Bu out of ancient China. The
Hmm.
story goes that Lu Bu was backing, who was a famous warrior at the time, was backing a particular lord who was not exactly ethical. He wasn't well loved or anything else. And there was a guy who wanted that lord toppled. Again, the name escapes me, but he recognized that Lu Bu was the guy that was keeping this one in power. So he created a conflict between the two by drawing in this beautiful, intelligent woman to meet with Lu Bu, and Lu Bu fell in love with her. And then the woman met the licentious and very unpleasant lord that Lu Bu was backing and wanted her for himself. And it created a conflict that ultimately saw Lu Bu turn against the person he was formerly supporting
Hmm.
and ending his reign.
And I think we talked a lot about the characters the last time, but how do you come up with character names like this? Because they're quite, maybe, I don't know if mythical is the right word, but they're not names of people you went to school with or people you know, but they feel about right for fantasy.
Character names are, this is going to sound very strange to anybody who doesn't do this, but
Yeah.
often characters kind of reveal themselves.
Hmm.
It's writers sometimes refer to it as character rebellion. They made a whole movie about Charles Dickens having conversations with his characters because they seemed more real to him than real people that he knew. It can be very much like that, but names are usually references of some sort to who they are in the story. For example, Nua Callan Iwanor, the major villainous and protagonist of the series, her name comes from the Elvish language that Tolkien created, and I'm a huge Tolkien nut. And her name refers to a couple of different facets in the language that Tolkien created, regarding crossing rivers, crossing waters, new lands. Basically, her story is one of renewal and long travels. So her name is loosely based around that concept. Another character's name, Aorli, is an anagram from the name Leora, which in ancient Hebrew meant God's gift of light to me, which is her role in the story was as a guiding light to another major character. Names all mean something, and it's kind of funny when some people kind of figure it out and other people just don't. don't, they're little Easter eggs. If you don't know, you don't miss anything, but if you catch it, you like it.
Yeah, I was thinking that because maybe a lot of authors would forget to, have a meaning to a name. That maybe just call a character Steve because it's just the first name that came in their head and it's just a perfectly normal name. Whereas I suppose in real life, the names you give your children will mean something, whether they're named after someone or, sometimes maybe you just pick it because it's a nice name. But, they're named after someone or it means something. You think long and hard about the names of your children. So why not the names of your characters?
In one of my other new series, one of the characters' named is Bonnie Red. She's a alien pirate space captain, and she's named after Anne Bonny and Mary Read, who were pirates, women pirates in the 1700s. And her personality is loosely based off of several women pirates in history.
That's amazing. Women pirates are probably forgotten about in history. Would I be right to assume that?
I think it kind of depends on how much you like history. There's occasional mentions. Like I heard of Anne Bonny and Mary Read in school, but it was just like a throwaway line. I think there was one picture of the two. There's a lot of history to be drawn from, and that's where I get a lot of these concepts. That character was not meant to last, but the readers spontaneously identified her as the pirate queen and wanted more of her. They got a little bit of fan art, and they're like, okay, that means I should keep this character around. So now I've got the Booze Hounds series coming out, which is a series of short stories centered around her and her rise to power as a pirate queen.
Yeah. And when people do fan art, what are they basing that on? Do you have illustrations or pictures of the characters in the book, or are they going by the description of them alone?
Going by description. I can't draw at all. I paint with words, and then people come up with what these characters look like in their heads. Sometimes there's a little artist contribution there, but since I can't draw, I paint with words, and people send me stuff on that basis, which is always neat.
Now, you've also done another book, Who Endures the Red City, which sounds quite exciting. What happens in that story?
So this is the seventh book in the series. And at this point, the main character has reclaimed this destroyed city, the city of Comestra. She spent a fortune buying up all of the scattered enslaved citizens and bringing them back together, ending their diaspora. And she promised them power. She promised them a return to status. She promised them their city and their homes and getting everything back if only they would follow her. And this is the moment where she leads them back to their homes and claims the city for herself. And it becomes the basis of her power. And it's from here that she spreads out and forms the first kingdom out of these disparate city states, rebuilding everything that was lost. It's a huge moment, and the cover art for it was just absolutely fantastic. The artist truly nailed it.
And how many books have you done in the Who Endures series now? Because I think even last time we were talking, there were quite a few books in it. So now you've added a couple more. How many is that in total?
There are 9 currently completed. They're not all published yet, but there's 9 currently written and 3 more in the works. There's the Red City is coming out here shortly. The Conflicted Duty and the Who Conquers is the prequel. It tells the story of the rise of the Mother of Terror, the foundation that behind everything that Nua became.
There's probably a really obvious book series staring me in the face, but I don't know of many book series that have had 12 books in them. How do you keep having so much inspiration?
Lots of character development, and I draw heavily from historical figures. Like the main character in Who Conquers is a woman named Speranzi Jadar. All right, she is considered to be kind of ugly and not easy on the eyes, unmarriable and whatnot. So she focuses on archery and things that she's good at, becomes a mercenary leader, and she builds up a small force of experienced soldiers. She is basically a combination of various historical figures. Like if you took John Brown from American pre-Civil War history, who was an anti-slavery activist who hacked some slavers to death, Genghis Khan, Attila the Hun, and a couple of other historical figures, and all combined them into one forceful, vengeful woman. That's who she becomes. becomes, she ends up overthrowing everything around her to lay down the foundations of a new empire. And that's birthplace of the character for Who Endures.
You mentioned, of course, the Who Conquers prequel to the series is coming out. What made you want to do a prequel?
This is where it's going to sound strange because I got my start with fan fiction. All right.
Yeah.
I started writing an Overlord fan fiction a couple of years ago that got very popular. And it was the Speranzi Jadah's character that really launched it.
Yeah.
Who Endures came much later. And that started off as a kind of expansion on that series, picking up with a major character, giving her her own series after people conducted a fan art campaign to save her from death. The Save Nua 2019 campaign was fun. But what got me, what really launched this, a fan really liked the story so much that he took fan art, made it into a cover, had the book bound, and sent me a copy.
Wow.
And that was when I actually started publishing. So I started going back and rewriting some of my older stuff. I've had a lot more experience writing since then. I've gotten much better. Practice makes perfect. So now I'm going back to the beginning and retelling all of this as completely original works. And it's working. It's coming along nicely. I'm 65,000, 70,000 words into Who Conquers. I'm about 65,000 words into Conflicted Duty. And I'm on the 10th book right now for the Who Endures series.
And because you're working on so many books at the one time, do you have to plan them out before you do it? Because I'm guessing you can't start work on the second book, for example, until you know how the first book is going to end.
As unbelievable as it may sound, I don't actually have to plan out a whole lot. I know kind of exactly what's going to happen, which I know sounds kind of contradictory, but hey, that's how it goes. I do know exactly what's going to happen, and then sometimes a character will throw a monkey wrench into it and it'll go off the rails, and I will let it. When characters do or seem to want to do something different, it's a good idea to let them.
Yeah.
They become something different. Trying to force them into a role just makes the story sound kind of clunky. Sometimes it's just let them do their thing and the story will tell itself.
What are you working on? I mean, have you got plans for even more books after the ones that we've mentioned?
Oh, dozens.
Literally dozens?
Oh, yeah, literally dozens. I have, Blood in the Streets has to be done. That's basically Nua's kind of origin story where she is still a slave and still in rebellion and still working for the other side, acting as an operative and an informant. There's still the end of the Who Endure series. There's still Inn of Amens, which is kind of a more heartwarming story, which is post-death reincarnation for a couple of characters. Sometimes I like a character so much that even if I give them a sad ending, I feel really bad about it and want to give them a happier ending. So I'll kind of retell their story in another way. I did that with The Strongest in the World. One of the characters died in a way that made me very, very sad. And so I kind of rebooted her and her love interest in a different story to kind of give them another shot at a happier life.
So in the meantime, where are we able to keep up to date with you and find your books from the Who Endures series and the Who Conquers prequel when it comes out?
Amazon is where I primarily release. Now, I also have a Patreon, which is patreon.com/telling stories. And I put materials out on there as well because not everybody can afford, to spend $10 on a book. But $1 a month as a subscription, they typically can. And, I think everybody deserves to be entertained. Times are tough out there. So whatever I can provide people, I will. And if some people join my author Discord, I put stuff out on there as well, and that they don't even have to pay for. So people do what they can. I accept whatever support I get.
Excellent. Well, many thanks for talking to us today. It's been great to have you on the show again.
All right. It's been fun. I look forward to the next one.